Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. I have Meredith Jones, author, Women of the Street, Why Female Money Managers Generate Higher Returns, on the show with us today. Meredith, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm glad you're here. Tell me about your book.
So my book actually looks at the reasons why women actually are really good with money and investing. I think the myth has been that women are terrible with money, that all they know how to do is spend it, when in fact women are great savers and women are great investors. And the collective body of research shows that women actually can outperform men in the context of investing, whether they're retail investors, whether they are professional investors, whether they just have a 401k. And I think that's really important for people to know, because by not including more women in investing and finance roles, we're actually leaving money on the table.
I agree with you. I've been trading since 1980. And I've found that it just works out that way, that women are better at it than men as a whole. There's always exceptions to the rule. But
well, clearly. So, I mean, there's no hard and fast rule with it when it comes to investing, although there is a book out there called Warren Buffett Invests Like a Girl. So there's definitely some traits that have been identified as being typically female investing traits that men exhibit, and I'm sure that there are some male investing habits that women exhibit to you.
Now, you've also experienced that women have to prove themselves to be of benefit to companies. Tell us your story.
So, it's funny. I do get questions occasionally from people who question whether there is a diversity dividend. And I think the research is quite clear. There is research that shows, for example, that companies that have a higher percentage of female employees, regardless of industry, have a tendency to perform better. Companies with a higher percentage of women on the board have a tendency to perform better. Female investors have a tendency to perform better. But yet I still will get people who ask, how do we know diversity is a good thing? And I'm always happy to share the results of studies with them because, again, I'm not lacking for data. But I do question why women have to prove that they're additive to a situation. It seems like when you're dealing with men or other demographic groups, no one's asking them to prove how they'll be better than another group. It's all very suspect. And it seems like that's just an extra hurdle that women have to overcome when it comes to getting hired, when it comes to making a case for additional diversity in their company.
I agree. What are some of the characteristics women exhibit while investing, and how can men make better use of these characteristics and skill sets?
So women have a number of traits that come off of biology, cognition, and that translates into behavior. Some of them are, for example, that women have a tendency to be less overconfident than men when it comes to investing. And one of the things that happens when you're overconfident is you believe that every idea you have is a good one. So if you think it's time to sell, clearly it's time to sell. If you think it's time to buy, clearly it must be time to buy. And so investors who are overconfident, whether they are men or women, although research shows they have a tendency to be men, have a tendency to trade a lot more. And you can seriously erode your returns just simply by overtrading. Women also are really good at ignoring market noise. So one study showed, for example, that women were less likely to sell their investments during the financial crisis that happened in 2008. And as a result, they didn't lock in losses that men locked in at that time. And so their portfolios over time during the run-up that followed actually outperformed. And you can trace that back to the simple fact that women have a slightly different brain structure than men. And so as a result, the part of their brain that processes stress, the amygdala, is structured differently. And they have a tendency to process stress internally, where men have a tendency to process stress externally. So when a problem comes up, a guy wants to fix it. Anybody who's married to a guy can pretty much tell you that. when a problem comes up with a woman, often they internalize that, and I'm living proof of that. I have a tendency to eat a tub of ice cream personally, but as a result, when the financial crisis happened, women didn't have the instinct to make the pain stop by selling into that market. They might have worried about it, they might have been totally freaked out, but they didn't need to take the action. And so that's another way that you see differentiated behavior. And there's any number of additional ways that men and women differ in their investing behavior as well.
Okay, we can go into that in another conversation because I'm sure that's a many faceted topic. But let's move forward here. What can we do to encourage more women? What's your best piece of advice?
Well, I think we have to focus really on three things. The first thing we have to focus on is the pipeline. So we know that we have a tendency to have girls drop out of STEM-related topics pretty early, around age 11. And so I think if we want to have more women in the investment industry and really more women in finance in general, we have to do something to stop that from happening, because if there's not women who want to go into the industry and who are well trained to go into the industry, because this is not about just saying, hey, any woman qualified or not qualified, come on in. It's about having skilled women enter the field. Then we have to take some action to fix the pipeline. We also have to take some action to look at parity in the workplace. One of the things that's really frustrating for me is that when we talk about work-life balance, we're often talking to women. And I'm pretty sure that most guys want to have a little work-life balance too. And so rather than having something that's a stigma of being a woman's thing, why don't we just say that humans want to have work-life balance and work to have policies that actually provide that for all employees? And then the last thing is we have to promote women. Right now, if you look at the investing industry, for example, about 1 in 5 of the participants in my industry is a woman, and the vast majority of them are junior. And so we have to take steps to make sure that we really move the qualified women up the food chain so that we can get the benefit of their diversity of thought into senior leadership.
Well said. Meredith, thanks for being a guest on the show.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Don't forget, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba.